Welcome to the Managing Anxiety workshop, and this is part 1 of the workshop. In the workshop today, we're going to be covering what is meant by anxiety. We're also going to identify the signs of anxiety and look at the cycle of anxiety we can get trapped into. And part 2 will focus more on things we can do to help manage or reduce anxiety levels and ways to soothe and calm ourselves. So to begin with, we're going to do a few group challenges just to get you thinking a little bit. So as we go through, you can either put your hand up or shout out the answer, and your teacher will call pause as we go along. This is an anagram. Can anybody solve this anagram? And just a hint, this word is something to do with anxiety. So it's related to anxiety. What is this word? You may want to pause and I'll reveal the answer on the next slide. The answer is adrenaline. So adrenaline gets released when we feel stressed or anxious, and it's something that we'll come on to talk about a little bit more in this presentation. Okay, acute stress involves a natural response, commonly known as the what response. So are you able to fill in the blanks? Again, this is around anxiety. What is this response known as? You may take a pause and I'll reveal the answer on the next slide. So the answer to this is the fight or flight response, sometimes known as the fight, flight or freeze response as well. So again, this is something we will be covering in today's workshop. The next question is, name 3 physical symptoms associated with anxiety. So 3 physical symptoms related to anxiety. Again, pause here. And the answers will be revealed later with all of the different types of symptoms, but some people in their answers may have mentioned things like shaking, heart rate increasing, breathing becoming more shallow, but we'll cover more of this later. Okay, round 2. According to the Childline National Exam Stress Survey, 1,300 young people, what percentage of young people felt anxious about exams and revision? So you may want to pause here and see what everybody thinks, or just note down what percentage of young people felt anxious about exams and revision, and this will be revealed on the next slide. But also we want you to think about what percentage of young people felt under pressure from their parents to do well. So think about that, pause, and I'm going to reveal the answers on the next slide. 96% of young people felt anxious about exams and revision. So that's a huge number of people, and that goes to show how common and quite normal and natural it is to experience some anxiety or stress around exams. The answer to the next one, 59%. So not quite as high, but still the majority of people felt under pressure from their parents to do well. Round 3. What does everyone in this room have in common with all of these celebrities? So if you take a pause now, and the answer to this is we all have in common with these celebrities is that we all have mental health. So everyone in the room has mental health, everyone on this page has mental health. Mental health is something that everybody has, just like everyone has their own physical health. But mental health can exist on a continuum. So sometimes people find that their mental health is really flourishing and positive. And some people at the other end find that they're really struggling with their mental health. And it can change, it can go up and down. Okay, to begin with, you may just want to take a look at these and see if anyone can identify who these 3 celebrities are. So we'll see their childhood pictures of them. So just take a pause and first see who can identify them. Okay, so we've got Adele, Leonardo, and Cara. So those are all quite tricky. Now the next question is, what do all of these people have in common? So these 3 celebrities, does anyone know what they have in common? The answer to this is that they all experience anxiety or depression. So they've all identified and spoken to the media about experiencing anxiety and depression. And it is important to remember that it can happen to anyone, including lots of celebrities who are starting to come out about their own mental health difficulties. Now we're going to move on to discussing anxiety in a little bit more detail. To begin with, it's really important to state that anxiety is really important emotion that we have and really common. So everybody experiences anxiety and everybody actually needs anxiety in their lives. So this video will go on to explain the importance of anxiety. And essentially we've evolved to have anxiety because it's kept us safe in the past. And when we experience anxiety, we get a rush of adrenaline, which puts the body into this fight, flight, or freeze response. Now, if you can now click onto this video and use that URL link, and this goes on to explain anxiety and the fight, flight, or freeze response. Okay, triggers of anxiety. So there's lots of different things that may trigger off someone's anxiety, and it can be different to different people, but we've just put some common triggers up here. So one of them is animals. It may be that certain animals, commonly things like spiders or snakes, may trigger someone's anxiety. Public speaking is a really common one. So we may mean by that doing a presentation in front of people, or it could just be putting your hand up in class. That can make people feel quite anxious. New or uncertain situations. So as humans, we can find uncertainty quite unsettling. Going to school is another common one, and that could be multiple reasons why people feel anxious about coming to school. Exam pressure, that got mentioned in the survey. So exam pressure is a huge trigger of stress and anxiety for people. Often people have thoughts about really wanting to do well and worrying about failing. Illness or health is another common one, so worrying about our health deteriorating or being in danger. Appearance can also be quite common. Some people feel they get quite self-conscious about how they look and worry about how others perceive them. And also friendships. Naturally, as humans, we all want to make connections and maintain friendship groups. So friendships can be a cause of anxiety as well. So it may be many different things, and there may be some things that trigger your anxiety which aren't on here. But anxiety often does have some kind of trigger or cause that we can relate it to. And most people will find that there's at least 1 or 2 things that trigger some anxiety in them. That is very common. So now we want to have just a bit of a discussion about what are the signs of anxiety. So those telltale signs that someone's experiencing anxiety. And to help you think about this, you may want to think about, how do you experience anxiety in yourself? How do you notice that you're anxious? Also, how you notice that your friends may be anxious, or someone in your family. So what are those signs of anxiety? Take a pause here discuss it with someone next to you, and then maybe, if you can, feedback some of these signs to the class. And then after this, I will go through some of the indicators of anxiety. Okay, so in your discussions, you will have talked about some of the signs of anxiety you notice, and I'm going to go through some of the common signs of anxiety. And generally, they can be categorized into physical symptoms, thoughts and feelings, and behaviors. So under the physical category, there's lots of different kind of physical sensations we may have when we're anxious, and again, that's linked to that adrenaline response, the fight or flight response, which can impact us in the moment, but can also have more long-term impacts on the body. Some people may find it really hard to sleep when they're experiencing anxiety, generally feeling tired and having low energy. Also quite common is experiencing tension in your muscles or headaches. It can affect breathing, so some people feel they're quite short of breath when they're anxious. Research actually shows that people are more likely to get colds or ill because the immune system can be slightly compromised if we're experiencing ongoing anxiety. Also can be really tricky to concentrate or remember information. People also note that they can get aches and pains in their body, and it also affects their gastro symptom, making them feel nauseous or needing the toilet a lot. So these are lots of physical sensations of anxiety. Now moving to thoughts and feelings. Anxiety in itself is a feeling, but it can also lead to other types of feelings, such as just feeling generally overwhelmed, experiencing negative emotions, sadness, frustration, anger, irritability. Some people feel restless. And often people with anxiety talk about this impending sense of doom. And connected to that, they may have the thought something bad is going to happen. So with anxiety, the brain is often thinking in the future and thinking about what could go wrong or what may happen that is negative. And lastly, we have the behaviours. So there's lots of different reactions that people may have to anxiety. So it could be overeating, undereating. It may be self-harm. Maybe forgetting lots of information. So we know if we've got anxiety, it can be hard to remember information and also easy to forget. Taking risks, a common one is fidgeting or nail biting, crying, withdrawing from friends and family. That's very common when we experience lots of anxiety or overwhelming emotions. Could also lead to angry outbursts. And two of the really common ones, which we will go on to talk about in more detail, is avoiding and seeking reassurance. So when people feel anxious about something and that fight or flight response is kicking in, we have the inclination to just want to avoid the thing that we're anxious about. And seeking reassurance is about asking questions over and over again of someone else, to check if you're going to be okay, what's going to happen. So constantly asking those questions of other people. So these are some of the general signs of anxiety that you may or may not be able to relate to. And in the second half of the workshop, we'll talk a little bit more about managing some of these.